Hello, everybody. Welcome to another caster breakdown. I hope you're having a great holiday so far. And I am looking to do maybe a faster one today. We'll see if I can really live up to that. You guys know how I am. But I'm going to be doing one clip from myself and a couple smaller clips from James here today. We are going to go back in time a little bit because this first clip is from MLG Columbus 2016, which was my second major. So yeah, this is going to be fun. And this is, by the way, I should say, one of the clips I think for me when I look back, I'm the most proud of, and it was early in my caster career as a Counter-Strike commentator for sure. So let's look at the clip and then we'll break it down. Oh, and I'm using the HLTV edit because it's just a lot cleaner.
Fallen taking down a Drent. This is looking very hard right now for Liquid to get in here. Fallen though whiffing a shot. There's the second though. Now again, as we've seen so many times before, it's down to Hiko, but against 4, is it really possible? We do have a few players quite tagged up here from Luminosity, so Hiko definitely not going down without a fight. Oh wow, there's the first fast frag. Hiko gets a double. There's still 2 players left. They got no health on them. 13 and 3. Hiko creeping around the site now. There's still time. Oh my goodness, how does he do this? How does Hiko do it again?
Clean sheet remains for Liquid. Luminosity yet to find a round. Hiko is the clutch god of Counter-Strike, surely.
All right, so the first thing I'll mention with this one is that, yeah, this is early in my casting career. I think the second major, I think the first one was Collusion of Poker. So definitely a lot of weaknesses in my casting game. And one of the biggest ones that I really was trying hard for many years to work on and managed to do a good job improving ultimately was the voice. And this was a point where my voice was still a bit too high in how it registered. And it was a lot worse than you hear here. In fact, here is definitely an improvement from 2012, 2013 when I started in Quake. And back then my voice was very high, like very much in my throat, and I didn't really have any deep sense of anything going on. So it was not a good sound. And it's definitely improved, like I said here, but it wasn't until 2018 or 2019 that I felt like it was really starting to get to a place that I felt like this is a good broadcast voice. And that is something that I'll probably do a video on to sort of look at the transformation. And that's a future video I'll make. But let's look at how I set up this.
There's the second though. Now again, as we've seen so many times before, it's down to Hiko, but against 4, is it really possible?
So, okay, so the context, if you are a newer Counter-Strike fan, you're looking at this. Back then, Hiko was definitely the best clutch, one of the absolute best clutches. That was a reputation that he has had throughout his entire career as a player. He's very well known for it. And there are those players that have that special quality when you watch them. And another one in this time period was also Shox. Shoxy was amazing. And whenever you watched him, you always felt like it was possible. And there's always players like that. You guys will, if you're fans of Counter-Strike, you'll know precisely what I mean. It's just a feeling that you get when you watch a player who's in a really big disadvantage. And there are certain players where you just write them off in your head. And then there are certain players where you're like, oh, I believe that this guy can actually do this. I might be about to watch a great moment. Now, I set that up by saying, this Hiko, he's done this many times before, so I'm setting up that reputation that he has. So that's like a narrative thread that exists in this match. And whenever Hiko's playing, especially back then, it's something that was always a factor. And he's often going to be one of the last players left, also based on his style of play. So going into this moment, I then asked the question, but is it really possible? We've seen Hiko do this before. But is it really possible? So asking that question, and what this does is it gives the viewer this expectation that, hey, I could be about to watch something. So I'm basically, that feeling that I mentioned that you have when you watch a player like this, I basically just set that up in a sentence so that it really confirms that emotional feeling that everyone feels when they watch Hiko, if they know anything about Counter-Strike at the time. And so I'm playing off of that. And then by asking, is it really possible? This is important because I mentioned this in the Launders and Scrawny clip as well, where you want to be suggestive of, so you want to prime the audience for what they might be about to see, especially if you think that it has the makings of something epic, but you also don't want to create a world where you're working yourself into a corner that if it doesn't happen, it's very hard to kind of get back out of that corner again, because you'll lose credibility with the audience if you say definitively anything that it's going to happen or it doesn't happen. Because if the opposite happens to what you led them to believe explicitly, they're then going to not like to listen to you because they've become aware that they can't trust you as a narrator in this game. So you have to be very cautious with that. So it takes some artistry to try to work around that, but to still be able to kind of engage people in very exciting or potentially exciting moments. And in this instance, I ask a question. That's the tool I use to achieve that. And in I think the clip with Launders, he does it in a different way in that particular case.
We do have a few players quite tagged up here from Luminosity, so Hiko definitely not going down without a fight.
So we have a few players quite tagged up here by Luminosity, but Hiko definitely not going down without a fight. So this is another bit of setup, but where I'm basically playing into it once again. Okay, because what we right now have a setup for is it's Hiko. So let's try to put everything on the table to see how he could actually do this. What is here that you could spin into his advantage? Well, they're really tagged up, you know. So I'm laying out the context of both what he has to deal with, but also I'm building up the fact that it is possible. These are the reasons why you should believe that it's possible. So that makes you get really engaged and really bought into Hiko in this moment. And so that means the payoff, if he does it, is massive. But I've also still not committed you into thinking that he will do it or that he won't do it.
Oh, wow, there's a first boss frag. Hiko gets a double. There's still 2 players left. They got no health on them.
So as I'm doing that setup, we see this case where Hiko actually gets 2 kills straight away. So I've talked about this before, where you have to just react sometimes because you'll be caught in setup or you'll be caught in some moment, and then something happens much quicker than you anticipated. So you just have to react. And what I do is I bring the volume up and I bring the pacing up, and I say what happens. Oh, Hiko gets a double. Let's listen to it again real quick.
We do have a few players quite tagged up here from Luminosity.
So you can hear the pace is quite slow and the volume's lower as well.
So Hiko definitely not going down without a fight. Oh wow, there's the first boss frag. Hiko gets a double.
And then so as soon as he gets that first kill, it's like, oh wow. And so we're starting to ramp a little bit. And then when he gets the double, it's like, oh, Hiko gets a double. So it's like we're up. There's a big contrast between a couple seconds ago, but we're still not at the top of my range.
There's still 2 players left. They got no.
And we're framing, so we're not just going down instantly. We're not resetting like insta, because you can't just drop off a cliff. That's jarring. What instead you need to do is de-escalate. So we're de-escalating, and we're framing now the 1v2. So what is, much like we had the scenario before where we framed the clutch, we're reframing because it's a reset moment, but we're de-escalating. So we're staying up a little bit, then we're going down and slowing it down after we are setting
no
up.
on them. 13 and 3, Hiko.
13 and 3. And then the big drop in volume, Hiko. So we go right down here because we're almost at the end of the clutch, and we want to have the capacity to ramp like crazy, to have a super strong finish. At least that's the choice that I generally love to use. And right now, so this is the reset moment of like Hiko creeping around the site.
Creeping around the site now. There's still time.
There's still time. And then and as I've said, there's still time. Because again, remember, with commentary, you're committing to saying not just a word. You often have to say a few words to describe a thing. So to do that, sometimes things will happen during that period. And so then you're in a different situation, you have to adapt. And so he's jumped up on these boxes, and because, you know, if you know Counter-Strike, you know that this guy is absolutely toast. The fact that he goes jumped up on these boxes and this guy is just really not facing the right way, obviously, we know he's dead 100% of the time. So at this point in time, I know 100% Hiko gets himself into a 1v1. So the fact that now, after it looked, we set it up to say, is this even possible, even for Hiko? The fact that we're in a 1v1 in of itself is deserving of going really just ramping like fucking crazy. So we get, oh my goodness.
Oh my goodness, how does he do?
So I'm already committing to saying, oh my goodness, how does he do this? Because that in of itself is still fine, because even if he doesn't like complete the clutch, he's still done more than anyone expected in this moment, and has proven that he is still a clutch, like an awesome clutch player. But you know, I don't know that he's going to get the final kill too. So let's just go back a bit.
3, Hiko. Creeping around the site now. There's still time. Oh my goodness, how does he do this? How does Hiko do it again?
So the how does Hiko do it again? That is something that I can slap onto the end of how does he do this? Like, oh my goodness, how does he do this? And then the how does he do this again means that he's completed the clutch. So it could be the case that Taco actually falls off of this position, or maybe he has more health because he has 3 HP. So he's going down to the spray. So Hiko's obviously able to, that's how he kills them. He's able to spray him through the box here. But I'm not necessarily even thinking about that in this moment. What I'm doing is I'm just playing off of what happens. So fortunately, he just kills him straight away. So I get to kind of make it sound really clean. But if he hadn't, after, oh my goodness, how does he do this? And I've really dug deep for that. I still have the ability to transition, de-escalate, or keep it high depending on what happens next. So I've given myself options and outs to still make it sound good no matter what happens. But again, fortunately, the best kind of thing happens, I think, for me. And it's like, oh my goodness, how does he do this? And then how does he could do it again as the finish, and I can just send it.
Still time. Oh my goodness, how does he do this? How does he go do it again?
So it almost sounds like I knew, because of the way that, this is really awesome how this all played out. And then I just cut noise completely after that. Because obviously the crowd is going absolutely wild. And so when you're in these scenarios at majors, when you're in playoffs, you have the crowd's noise, you obviously have this capacity that you can use them as the third man in the commentary booth, because the crowd is just it tells you everything. It's tension, it's the emotion, it's the intensity, it's the volume. It speaks so much in these moments. So you need to learn how to use it as a commentator to your advantage. And when you're finishing clutches like this, where you end it on a super big high, one of the hardest things is to not make everything sound shit after that, because you just had a great moment of relief of the tension, and it's epic, but you don't want to reduce the feeling of how epic it is right after that moment by just saying something at the wrong level, or saying something that doesn't sound cool, so there's a bit of extra to do here. And so what's really cool about this clip, and one of the reasons why I love it so much too, is because not only do we get the use of the crowd noise, but also James does a really good job of the cap off. And so we're going to talk about that now.
Clean sheet remains for Liquid. Luminosity yet to find a round. Hiko is the clutch god of Counter-Strike, surely.
So this is so brilliant by James, because what he does is he also does a great job here. He really does, because by saying, the clean sheet remains is awesome, because it's basically another context piece. So it's a great context piece, because Hiko just did a 1v4 clutch to keep the clean sheet, which is kind of insane. And then so he frames it by saying, they yet to get around.
Is the clutch god yet to find a round. Hiko is
yet to find a round. And then then driving that story that we talked about before, whenever Hiko's involved in a game of Counter-Strike at this time, you're thinking that he is the clutch god, that's his reputation. And so this is a moment, this is a famous clutch for Hiko. And so for him to also get the clutch god of Counter-Strike, for us to reassert the branding that Hiko has earned in his career, the identity of the clutch god, I think is just such a perfect cap off to this moment. And also the other thing is that James and the contrast of his voice with mine makes it actually so much better that he did the cap off here, because that was an area of significant weakness, I would say, for myself, especially at this time period. So it worked out very well for it to be like this. And he has such a good, obviously, strong kind of deeper voice, and he has that serious tone throughout it, which just feels epic. So this is, it's one of the clips I think when I look back on, I think on one of the clips I'm the proudest of. And the thing is that, I'm breaking it down and talking about all these fundamentals, but obviously, casting is really hard, and stuff it's always adaptation. So like you've gathered from how I've talked about some of these dilemmas, you need to be setting yourself up constantly to have outs and to be able to still make things sound good even if they don't go as you expect, and to adapt to things that happen on the fly that may derail what you're doing. So casting, it doesn't always come together, but when it does, it's pretty awesome. So with that said, let's jump into a couple clips from James, because I wanted to not make this super short. And I thought it'd be kind of cool to do. I mean, there's so many things clips to go over in just total. So,
and I think we're witnessing it.
Yeah, well, this is a guessing game here.
Okay, so this is the next one.
Teams Na'Vi, they realize there's no time. They can't
E-League Major. Okay, so this is a while ago too. This is like, what, 2016, 2017? 2017, I think, something like that.
Mess around, they have to go for one bomb site.
Wait. Yeah, no? Okay, you know what? Oh, it says it right here, 2017. Okay, I was right. Because I was trying to think, hang on, which E-League Major? I was thinking to myself, you know?
As they gravitate towards the A sites, this is going to be hard. Flamey's been doing big stuff. Simple needs to deliver as well as they start to bring in the pain.
Okay, so I already made a mistake here. I made a couple mistakes. It sounds like I'm sick. That's not an excuse though, but it sounds like I'm sick. But I made a mistake here. I was initially doing setup, which is fine. So I'm basically like setting things up. Like we've got a 2v4 retake that's about to happen. Glaze in a deeper position, and Flamey's going to have to go through jungle potentially, and Simple's having to rotate from B. So this is a pretty difficult 2v4 clutch for them. Now, I need to shut up after I've done enough setup, and it's the case that we're going to get an engagement. And I talk about buffer time. I don't give James any buffer time here, but the reason I wanted to like highlight this clip too is because James does a really good job of, regardless of me making that mistake, he takes over. Anyway.
Gravitate towards the A sites. This is going to be hard. Flamey's been doing big stuff. Simple needs to deliver as well as they start to bring in the pain from Connector.
Simple, can he face in time? The bomb's getting planted. He's slowing down, man. They're going to win the round. They've stolen it from the clutches of defeat. That is disgusting.
Okay, so I'm highlighting this especially because of how much I fucked up. So I'm like showing you one of my favorite clips of myself and then showing you a clip where I really fuck up. I fucked up in a couple of different ways. And this happens sometimes, by the way, when casting, because sometimes you are like really exhausted. So sometimes, for whatever reason, whether it's the travel or whether you're just off your game that day, there's lots of different reasons. You can kind of have a lapse of concentration. But in this particular case, like if you look at the time, I did not highlight this at all. I did not highlight the time here. So that's kind of a problem because I talk about a concept in casting called the linchpin. It's just, I don't know. I just like, that's the term that I like to use. And it essentially means you have to identify as a caster, what is the one thing that would completely flip the round? What is the most important action or interaction in a round that significantly sways advantage or disadvantage one way or the other? And it could be so much so that it wins or loses the round. Now, if you can identify the linchpin, there's not normally very many of them in a round. There shouldn't be, because it should be that the difference in advantages is so significant that it's a winning play for the team that is on the better side of that. You need to identify those things because then you can build them up and set them up, because that's what people will remember from the round. And that is going to be the most important story of the round, is around that particular thing. And so the linchpin here is the fact that if we look at the time and even though they have the site, they don't have time for anything to go wrong here. So this is like one of the potential linchpins if it is exploited. And we can identify that there is a chance for it to be exploited because of Simple running through spawn and the fact that Kepi has no cover whatsoever from this position. So despite the fact that I fuck all this up, what James does is he takes over, because I've talked about this in previous review videos. Your co-caster should be empowered that they can just take over and bulldoze you where necessary. And there's different ways to do it, but we can hear how James does it here again.
Simple, can he face in time? The bomb's getting planted. He's slowing down, man. They're going to win the round. They've stolen it from the clutches of defeat. That is disgusting.
So he kind of just drives the moment home. And the funny thing is, like, I'm on this like different plane of existence with this round. Like I'm not even like the fact that I've missed this so completely up until this point. And that happens, like I said, that happens sometimes, but he really helps to just drive the moment anyway. So the fact that I messed everything up, he has saved my ass here. So yeah, that's pretty nice that he did that. So let's look at the next one. Another thing here as well, actually, I'll quickly say about this. So the tone and pacing that I had, the volume that I had, because I don't see the correct thing, my tone and pacing and all that kind of stuff is just completely off. And when James comes in, he comes in with the correct one. And the correct tone and pacing and volume and everything, that is always going to be reflective of what is happening in the round. So if really important, intense things are happening in the round, your tone, pacing, volume, everything should reflect that. And that's how you know I'm not casting this correctly, because I did not have that correct congruent sound, whereas James came in over the top and did. So he ends up, because, by the way, there's another thing. People tend to remember how things start and how things end, but not much in the middle. So make sure that you have a good finish, is, I guess, the message there. So a quick extra one here. We've got another one from James. This is a bit of a faster one.
Misses the shot. He's got a player in for support, but it's 3 versus 2 here. Nothing finds the first frag. JW's a trade, but he's not going to be able to escape this corner. He's going to find an AWP, and there sees it, and another frag. What the hell's going on with that? This is absolutely...
So I just wanted to like play that one because at the time that this became like one of James's things where he would say, you know, Dan all the time, or like, what the hell's going on, Dan? And usually when people would say their co-commentator's name, they would use it as a way to throw, and it sounds really bad. And it generally is something that would have been associated with a like green commentator or a commentator that is not very good. But the way that he was using it was he injected a lot of personality. And one of the things that I wanted to also highlight here is that one of the things that was really, I think, key in James's style of commentary that really captured people was both how he injected his personality and his humor into his improvisation. And so when a moment like this happens, you know, listen to how he's hitting the pacing. So the pacing is like boom, 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 because it's a faster pacing because the action's intense. So, okay, we can check that box in terms of the fundamentals.
But it's 3 versus 2 here. Nothing finds the first frag. JW's a trade, but he's not going to be able to escape this corner. He's going to find an AWP, and there sees it, and another frag. What the hell's going on with that?
And also and much like with the Hiko moment there, and I talk about this dynamic casting a lot. Once you hit that tempo, so long as you are delivering on the tempo, it gives you the ability to, each time, you know, it's your time to start speaking again, you can talk in these like mini statements, and each mini statement can reflect the new piece of information you've just got. And when you're in an intense scenario where action is happening quickly, that is very important to be able to understand how to use, because as we saw here, it allows James to actually commentate the things that are happening in these short bursts while still keeping the intensity, but also adding in his flair, his own flair. So let's listen to it one last time.
In for support, but it's 3 versus 2 here. Nothing finds the first frag. JW's a trade, but he's not going to be able to escape this corner. He's going to find an AWP, and there sees it, and another frag. What the hell's going on with that?
Yeah, so he has that. He just has that certain like emotional quality, like the way that he delivers it, that's unique to him, and you know, mixed in with the humor and everything else. I think that was something that people always really appreciated about what he brought to the cast. So, all right, I think that about does it for this video. Again, like I said, a bit of a shorter one today. We'll be doing obviously so many of these. There's a lot of cool moments to go over, and I will definitely, people have been asking me to find VODs where I can be critical of myself. Obviously, we did a little bit of that here where I showed a clip where I completely missed on the cast. And I think that is important to show because casting, especially in Counter-Strike, has a lot of moments that can be particularly uninteresting or dull, or a lot of moments where there can be really big misses because your concentration is lapsing. And back in these days, we also had MR15, so the games were longer. And depending on the meta, could be much slower too. So generally speaking, you know, you had to be able to stay in a good place regardless of that, but it wasn't always easier to do depending on the scenarios. But it's important, I think, to highlight how casting is iterative, that you think about how do I sound better? Like really that is the core question. How do I sound better? And how do I make sure that I'm engaging or more engaging? Because those are the two things really. It needs to sound good and be engaging for the viewers. But again, it also has to be honest to the game. Maybe those are the three things you're thinking about. And so over time you discuss with maybe your co-caster, or you're kind of listening back to your own VODs, and then you tweak things like, okay, that was really good. Let's do that more. Okay, that sounds really bad. We shouldn't do that again. Or let's try, casting a clutch in this way. Okay, well that didn't work. Should I like stretch out my words more in these certain scenarios? Or so it's like this like massively iterative process. So you need a lot of reps. It's just like, you know, getting better with any skill. Like as a professional player, this is how you do your practice as well. You know, you try to do the things that are good and encourage yourself to do more good behaviors that are correct. And then over time, as you experiment and limit test, you recognize the areas where that need refinement, and then you refine them, and you continue to iterate and learn and grow. But you need to get the reps to really have this process work out. So yeah, this is one of the reasons why the casters in Counter-Strike have become so good. It's because they've had so many reps over the years, and they're all talented individuals. So yeah, with that said, I will leave this off at 24 minutes for now. I hope you guys again have a great holiday, and I will see you soon.